out there for the internet for people that like to post a lot.
Yeah, it's true. You know, I don't know. It feels like I'm only 40, but you feel like you can see the cycles going, and everyone acts like everything's brand new. It's like, I don't know. Nothing's really new under the sun.
This is how our founding fathers wanted everything.
Yeah. I mean, you can get alarmed and stuff, but the reality is that I don't think anything's really that new,
Yeah, what's new is that there's more ways to broadcast your message. Now you can make your message look and sound better with AI. So maybe people that didn't see it before, now they'll see it. Is this going to be another way?
That is an interesting point, because before you look at before the radio, families sat around and sang together, and how people got their news was where they washed their clothes by the river. And that was like a hub of information, was like washing clothes. And, people would also go to work and they would sew at sewing, sweatshops, and they would exchange information there, and there'd be flyers that would be passed around like newspapers. The radio changed all that. And then it got worse. Yeah.
Fireside chat. Yeah, that was Twitter.
Yeah. Well, once you got into the internet, it's like the bandwidth information just exploded. And it's very different than what it used to be. It's not a distilled, processed version of information. It's more of like a limbic, brain version of information. Like social media is like the limbic brain of the internet.
What a good way to put it.
Stuff. Yeah, it's just all the emotional stuff. It's all the knee-jerk reactions to everything, and it's like, this is the untempered, unfiltered, uncounterbalanced like reaction to the world. That's your amygdala, and that's social media is your amygdala.
Yeah.
And people base their reality off of the social media. It's like, don't do that. Like, heaven for, geez, man, that's the definition of PTSD. Don't do that. There are studies to prove this.
Oh, go on.
Yeah.
Prove what?
Sorry. That there was a week before Jack Dorsey quit Twitter, there was a meta-analysis that showed that social media is just bad for your mental health. And I remember distinctly Jack Dorsey quit a week after it was published.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt that. There is counter evidence. So the main critique of a lot of those studies is those were general mental health surveys and not surveys designed to determine the effect of neurofeedback. And so when researchers from Oxford and other places have actually tried to investigate specifically what is social media. We're talking about social media. When they try to investigate social media effect, when they design the study for that, they find much more mixed and even maybe slight positives. So for instance, teenagers who use social media, they can use it to have better relationship with their friends and feel more connected. Marginalized groups.
So I think the hygiene thing.
Positive. What's up?
I don't think social media is bad for my mental health, but I have lots of rules on how I engage with it.
Smart.
And I don't think the average person does. And I could articulate those rules. I could even teach a class on why you would have certain rules in
what are the rules?
You should.
What are the rules? Yeah, it'd be nice to have a 20 minutes to prepare and come up with how to articulate them. But it's something like I don't do anything that doesn't feel fun. And so, for example, these aren't real people. These aren't real perspectives. In fact, the people that you're talking to online, most of the time, are just constructs of some version of themselves. They're not even giving you their real self. They're not giving you some honest depiction of who they are. They're kind of testing out some persona on you. That's not real. And so to get amplified by that, to get agitated by it, is also to respond sort of to something that's to a construct. It's not a good idea. And so if I'm noticing that I'm going to get agitated by something, I just don't engage with it. I move away from it. And and basically to say that I'm going to summarize like a bunch of principles in short. Social media should be enjoyable and fun. And if it's not, you're using it wrong.
I like that.
And everyone's using it wrong.
We all are. It's so tempting. One of the things that I try not to do is I can forget, but I try not to post on other people's content that they're wrong unless I think they might be actively harming. So if somebody says you should totally increase your frontal theta or something, be like, ooh, that's associated with poor mental health outcomes and stuff, but if it's just like, I don't like bread or whatever the heck it is, I try, but I fail too. Go on.
Yes. It's interesting, Anthony, is I know that other people think that way too. And that is not a filter that I have. And I never think about like it isn't obvious whose thread I'm on. I don't think about whether it's my thread or somebody else's.
That's fair.
But I know people do think that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about that. What's important to you about that?
Oh, because I know that people I wouldn't want it done to me unless it's important. I don't know if that makes sense. I forget how I came up with that rule, but I think, you know what it is? Even if you're right, often the person won't appreciate it. I think that is the thinking that I had in like, yeah, okay, this person doesn't understand carburetors, but do I really need to be the one to teach them or whatever? Now I fail, but so.
Yeah. Well, there like is a counter argument to that. Not that it matters, because this is not where we should be hashing out our information. But people get.
Are you saying Anthony's wrong?
No, it's not that simple. I wish it was that simple. It's more like people are kind of orienting to reality based on the feedback they get on social media, and that is not what they should be doing, but that is absolutely what they're doing. And so you could say, well, I put this information out there and I get nothing but positive responses. It's like, one, there's multiple layers of problems with that, and two, again, we could be artificially increasing narcissistic traits by allowing essentially like, okay, well, we'll leave people alone and we'll not increase dialogue over here. Ultimately, real conversations and real face-to-face stuff is where all the productive stuff happens.
Yeah. And it's like, I guess for me, who wants to be arguing all the time? So that's part of it. But what were you going to say, Pete?
I was going to say mentally, what's going on with these? Because AI is coming into play. Because we're talking about social media now. AI is stepping up everybody's social media game. For instance, like this trending thing. I haven't done it myself, but you put in whatever you're about, and then all of a sudden you get this caricature of yourself, and that's your identity. That's what you represent. Do you think stuff like that going forward, is that going to take everybody's game up a little bit on social media, make it better or worse, or to be determined?
So there's something called the dead internet theory, and that's the idea that AI will, and this is a theory that's 15 years old, so it's been proposed long before AI was functional, that false content from artificially generated automated content will be so real that it'll be indistinguishable from not real and real, that the internet will be essentially useless and people have to abandon it. I don't believe in the dead internet theory because, and I'll say something a little controversial, but if you spend time on X, you'll notice that they have AI that can tell you what's real and not real with one click. And so it's like the solution.
In the country it's coming from.
What's that? Yeah. So for example, you aren't going to be able to evaluate the quality of something, but AI is going to be the solution to AI. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And even Mark Zuckerberg knows this. He's basically said, like, I have to go and recreate what Elon's done over at Twitter. He's actually said that. He knows he has to do it. The community notes and the AI integration is the answer to all the false information, because you can click a button and it will be like it'll actually go through all the court documents, and it'll go through all the broadcast content, and it'll go through all the Twitter stuff, and it will have a hierarchy of evaluation. So it won't just let regular Twitter conversations dominate the narrative. It will actually go through and have a hierarchy of value, using the court outcomes as maybe higher or highest, and then lesser and lesser and lesser informations to inform or impress upon it. And that seems to be the best way to go.
So Facebook just had a quarterly report, and they it was annual, and their revenue had shot up like 20-30%.
Yeah.
And they attributed it all to AI.
Yeah.
And talked about how AI is the future of the company, not just for ad revenue, but I think he does think that content, like, click here and make a photo all about yourself, which is what I did. Somebody did it for me. People want to do that more. Yes. I've talked about on the show, people are talking to each other less on social media.
Yes.
So it may be that
no one talks to anybody on Twitter. It's just celebrities and politicians.
What do you say?
No one uses Twitter for conversating between peers. It's all politicians and news.
Yeah, it's never been. I heard it once. So Twitter is broadcast media, and Facebook is more social media. Instagram is, I don't know. It's your I don't know. your glamour shots. It began as that. But
well, it's old people like us. Well, me,
So
Facebook.
Have you seen what AI, what Meta is actually doing? Because they're not integrating into their social media. They're doing other things, which is very interesting.
What are they doing?
They have some very fascinating AI projects that are really underground that can do some very interesting analysis of like ground up, like molecular AI, ground up, like building antibiotics. They have weird projects like that. Then they have their Meta glasses. Have you looked into what those can do?
Yeah,
Ray-Ban project or whatever. Yeah.
So if you're an automotive mechanic, it will just walk you through how to do whatever you need to do on the car in front of you, and it will highlight and indicate and point to the tools you need and point to the parts of the car and tell you in your ear how much torque you need to remove and which wrench to grab. It'll highlight it in your field of vision. So it's not like you're getting a set of instructions from a computer or from a phone. You're getting it highlighted and circled and pointed at in your actual field of vision.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to replace phones. That's going to straight up replace phones.
Google Glass has had that in production, like in factories for like 10 years. But I'm aware that Facebook's product is a prototype called Orion, and it costs like 10,000. Nobody can own it yet. But yes, they're working on it too.
But when you can hire some 19-year-old kid who can do a really good job on cars because he's babysat by a computer, you might pay for it.
The mechanics union will never allow that. I'm half joking, but I agree. Yes, certain tasks will get easier.
Yes,
I don't know how many of us work with our hands, but yes, they will get. It will get better.
Well, there's a double-edged sword here. Let's say it goes into auto mechanic work. Okay, it's like, okay, I can hire almost nobodies to do car work, and they're going to do it very well because it's going to babysit
or robots from Tesla. That's another earnings call. Continue.
Well, but that's the next generation, is that any job that embraces the Meta glasses will inevitably be replaced by robots, because that is the data they're going to train the robots on. So it's a double-edged sword where you won't be able to compete if you don't use the glasses, but if you use the glasses, you'll be replaced in the long run. Like, it'll just be gone. So that's how you'll know something's coming for your industry, is that you'll see it kind of in the AI augmented reality. Once they started giving you augmented reality glasses to do your job at a higher rate and higher pace than your peers, that's the beginning of the end. Because that's the data they'll train the robots on.
I mean, at least the reports that it can produce are already so good that I don't know how half of white collar world has a job still. And there's Reddit threads about this that are literally, it's like, I don't know, some success group. I do nothing at my job. I earn 6 figures working for Microsoft, So I don't know when that would hit, but you would presume it would hit some point, So
well, I think AI is only being effectively used by like the programmers. And so you have people who can do their job faster and better, and they can take on multiple contracts, and the employers are none the wiser. These people at the top generally don't know how to integrate it in a way where they can replace their employees. The employees do, but they're not going to do that. Okay. So
I think, I saw something that dovetails, so they found out that the people that use AI the most are actually managers.
Really?
And I'm sure they're using them to create their form emails and their quarterly performance evaluations and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So LLM stuff then.
So there's some nuance there, but it's like I guess I'm just saying I keep waiting to hear massive white collar layoffs going on.
Not yet. So it's something like that will inevitably happen, but there won't be less work. There will be different work. Like there will be much more work to do. So it'll be displacement. It won't be elimination.
At least in the past, that has always happened. And the example I like to give is, if you look at the number of jobs, it's called non-farm payrolls in the U.S. It's always up and to the right at a 45-degree angle. Okay, but that's even all through that. We're automating. I mean, this is not AI is not the first thing we've ever automated. You could argue the car is automating. So anyway, we're constantly putting one group out of jobs, but we're creating all these new jobs.
More than we're
debate about. Would the rate increase more rapidly than we're prepared for because maybe AI becomes catastrophically different. I don't know. We'll see.
So the rate of change could exceed tolerance because people don't like change. There will definitely be more jobs than there are employees because you're going to put an AI algorithm together and you're going to pair it with a quantum computer, and then you're going to have something like, oh, we only had like 4 antibiotics and now we have 15. Okay, but we have to actually build these and we have to get them FDA approved. And the amount of work we've created is like 1 million hours of work. And we did that with like an afternoon, like, oh crap, So it's like, well, that's exciting, but the amount of jobs that it's going to create is insane. So you'll put out a bunch of, medical jobs, they'll be displaced, but the amount of medical jobs you created is going to be disproportionately higher than what you displaced. So automation is a good thing. The fact that robots are coming along with this, the problem is that you need a population that's hyper flexible. You need a population that says, I'm 40, I'm willing to find a totally different job than I was doing before. That's the attitude that will be a winning job. My grandfather, who I was very, very, very close to, was alive during the Great Depression.
Wow.
And he literally, because at one point I was worried about the recession hit when I joined the workforce in like 2004, and I was bummed out about it. And it took me like 10 years to get anything above minimum wage. And I asked him if it ever hit a recession, what should I do? And he said, why do you care? I was like, what do you mean, why do I care? He goes, you shouldn't care if there's a depression or not. Like, he actually lived through a depression. What do you mean, why do you care? He says, well, you just go from selling things to fixing things. It doesn't matter that much. I'm like, what? What do you mean? You go from selling things to fixing things? He's like, yeah, people still got to do stuff. So you just look at what needs done and you do it. If you are willing,
just had one of those Josh Moore brains, to be honest with you. I don't think most people found the Great Depression that easy.
No. But part of the problem is that the average person hates change, and that's why it's so bad. That's actually why it's so bad. So my grandfather was trying to tell me is that you shouldn't be the kind of person that this affects, because you should just accept change. That's what he was trying to tell me.
It's a good frame or perspective. Like, yes. I will say cognitive flexibility, which is what we're working on when we work on neurofeedback. Now, I will say I can't help but think, somebody just told me that they spent half an hour or an hour on the phone with their dad, who's a little bit older, trying to help them with their phone. And it became, well, can you help your uncle with his phone too? I'm trying to send it to him. He doesn't know how to receive it. And it just, and these are very, how do I send a text? And they've been working on this for 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
I have heard, and I'm convinced that there is change. People's brains become, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like concrete.
Yes.
And I don't know how much a good attitude prevents that. We need neurotherapy would help. Short of giving neurofeedback to everybody, I don't know what we do.
Excellent point. That it gets harder with age to change, and that's not a good thing, because it is healthy for you to embrace change older. You will be healthier older. If you want to be sharp when you're 90, you have to have an attitude of embracing change. Change gets more uncomfortable as you get older. The amount of discomfort that you embrace is going to be proportionate to the amount of flexibility that you have. So it's a poison pill. So it's like working out. It's no fun. Okay.
It is. I always like to think of my dad. My dad taught me how to use computers, but nowadays I got to teach him, and it's stuff. If I had to guess, he taught me forever ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and so it makes me think there's something different. I've heard neural pathways crystallize, or they harden, literally harden the myelin sheath.
Yeah, literally. There's an odd study that was really an outlier study. It showed they did an autopsy analysis on Alzheimer's patients, and they basically found that there was a whole subset of nuns that were heavily involved in their community, and they were going out from the nunnery doing lots of different things and lots of different tasks, and had a myriad of different new experiences on a regular basis. Some of them had advanced Alzheimer's and passed away, and on autopsy found that there was some advanced Alzheimer's. Either there was some sort of cover-up going on, or they just didn't seem to present with the symptoms. And one theory that was proposed in this study was that just the amount of novel, difficult experiences they were exposed to on a regular basis kind of kept them appearing sharper despite the Alzheimer's, which is like, that's an interesting theory.
Yeah, they're resilient, dementia resilient, and they do, and maybe even just the socializing, because just a string, you know what I think? They say you're accessing your memory. I think even just to string a sentence together takes some effort that you can get rusty, as we see with some Gen Z that maybe never gained those skills.
If
Josh,
it's comfortable in the short run, it's probably bad for you in the long run.
Ooh, I like that. I'm gonna be using that.
It's probably a rule. It's disturbingly probably a rule. If it's comfortable in the short run, it's probably bad for you in the long run.
We got a question here from you.
Yes.
For you, Josh, from Jahan.
Yeah.
He's asking, when is your frontal asymmetry seminar dropping?
Yeah. Yep. So I've been very distracted, and I apologize, because I bought a hard chamber HBOT system and I hired 3 employees and kind of lost a month towards trying to expand 40 hours of services to clients and hire a medical director. So it's been a whole thing. I suspect that is starting to calm down, because all the intakes are being done by the medical director and all the automation is being handled by an employee who's finally got that handled. I think I can turn my attention back to it and finish the slides and do the recording. I'd like to say a week, but if I'm being honest, it's always 2. So I'm always way too optimistic on timelines, because things come up and derail my time. If I was undisrupted, it would take a week. That is not likely. So
exactly. Do you want it fast or do you want it good? You pick
exactly.
2 or whatever.
There are like 33 really foundational studies on frontal asymmetries. There was more research than I expected.
Wow.
I'm extremely happy with the literature review that I'm doing. And so I think it's going to be a good class, which is what I'm hoping every time I dive into a phenotype. Like, if I gather up all the data on it, am I going to find, this to be really compelling and repeatable and have retestability? Is this going to be resilient against mood shifts, which is the case with frontal asymmetries? Is it going to go well? And it looks like the class is going to likely go well. So
Jahan asks, are you looking at frontal asymmetry as a marker or as a treatment approach?
So frontal asymmetries is, in terms of frontal alpha asymmetries, is a phenotype, which is sort of a version of a neuromarker. I would say, I think phenotypes is more of a genetically correlated finding, and neuromarkers is a broader term. And so it's a phenotype. It's associated with tryptophan deficiency in some cases. But they thought, and this is what I thought was fascinating in the research, they really thought that because women lose a lot of tryptophan when they breastfeed, that was going to be the postpartum neuromarker. That did not end up being the case. It just shows you how complex the human nervous system really is. That postpartum wasn't a frontal asymmetry, despite the fact that it seemed like it really was going to be. So there's some cool history of studying it. When you have it, it's pretty resilient against mood, but it will predict generally a mood imbalance. And the version of the asymmetry, meaning which direction you have the asymmetry, is going to predict whether you're going to be sad depressed or whether you're going to be agitated depressed. And it's primarily a depression neuromarker and primarily depression phenotype.
Yeah, and what I take from this, if I can be so bold, is that Jahan is referencing approaches that are trying to increase your asymmetry, probably to produce the desired effect. And I can tell you, Jahan, that I know that Jay is generally always trying to reduce asymmetry.
Yes,
because
that would be correct.
As Josh just said.
Yeah. So we do see that the left hemisphere sometimes likes to be something like 10% more activated than the right. However, when you see a 50% asymmetry, generally you are going to be able to predict that they have symptoms. So and mood can come and go. So maybe not that exact day, but regardless of whether in general, they're going to complain about some sort of depression, sad depression, agitated depression, and that will come and go. But the neuromarker will be there unchanged regardless of whether it's a good day or a bad day. Which is one thing that people kind of constantly ask, like, how much variability? And you get that from neurologists a lot. All those things come and go. Like, no, they don't. There's literally studies that say they don't. There's specific studies that say they don't.
When all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail, and they only care about seizures.
They seem to speak though, like they seem to say things sometimes, like those things have true variability. I'm like, where do you get that impression?
Even doctors will say to you, like, man, I hate neurology consults because they never really add anything helpful. And all I hear back is an ER doctor told me this, all I ever get is metabolic encephalopathy. And it's like, he's like, that tells me nothing. And it's like, why did you bother calling me, is what he says about neurology most of the time. Anyway, if it's not seizures. I had a question for you, Josh. Obviously we like EEG guided neurofeedback, etc. But if you had to pick areas that can cause problems with memory, what are the high value targets for memory? For a friend of mine who, she's physically healthy. The only neuromarker she was told is midline frontal theta. So I told her that maybe conceivably that's affecting it. What do you think?
Well, the first thing you look for when someone complains about memory is peak alpha frequency. That's kind of the most obvious one. And so you're going to see that be the mode. So if someone says, my memory is not doing well, okay, well, let's take a look at peak alpha frequency. But there's a lot of different types of memory. So people could be complaining about working memory, short-term memory, long-term memory. I'm sure that there's more than I'm listing. Sometimes you'll see some left temporal parietal junction issues that can cause working memory issues, I believe. I do think you're right that there's some memory function in the salience network. I don't usually see that being the neuromarker that propagates the complaint, though. I think that memory can be a global thing and can sometimes be a vertex finding. So something at the top frontal midline, or not frontal mid, but frontal central. Something more global. Like attention, for example, you see a lot of attention issues around on the top of the head, theta, that kind of thing. But the mode answer is going to be alpha peak frequency. If your alpha peak frequency drops relative to what you're used to, you're going to complain. If it drops below 9, you're going to complain. It's just how it's going to go. So you're not going to have memory that's commensurate with academic demands if your alpha peak frequency drops below 9.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of?
Go on.
Have you ever heard of? This is Radar again. Have you ever heard about neurofeedback helping someone with unwanted gender dysphoria? He wants to be clear. I don't have gender dysphoria, by the way. I'm interested in the topic.
Fair enough, Radar. Yeah. So that's a complicated question for sure, and complicated to discuss. But I will say that if the individual is dissociative, the answer is going to be yes, or can be yes. Now, other than that, if they are not dissociative, I hesitate to comment on it. So, but I do know for sure that I've had many PTSD clients with dissociation, and when we cleared up the dissociation, the gender dysphoria resolved as well. And the way that it resolved and what it resolved into has a high variability. Okay.
Jay,
go for it.
Can you train peak alpha up directly, or do you have to train other things? If you can train it up directly, where do you train?
So the classic approach, which is well researched, is called the brain brightener, and it's actually to train low beta from C4 to PZ. That's usually 12 to 15 hertz. If the alpha peak is really, really low, it might drag the low beta peak with it. So you might be doing like 11.5 to 7.5, or something like that. You might be doing 11 to 14. So you might be curtailing your frequencies down, so to avoid over arousal, because you might find that you're training mid beta if people have like a really, really, really slow alpha peak. Sometimes 12 to 15 is still where it's at, and sometimes that's slid down with the alpha. And you don't know. You kind of try it and you watch them. So that is a type of answer, maybe the most common answer. However, there are cases where sometimes you are training up fast alpha and you are training down the slow alpha. But the mode, or most of the time, you are going to be doing the brain brightener, which is more of a C4PZ low beta.
Getting back to Radar's question that he doesn't have dysphoria, what tends to help the dissociation?
Yeah, so dissociation is best addressed by protocols seen by Joe Kamiya, Ruth Lania. Those are kind of your landmark practitioners. Maybe Peniston is in there too. He did a lot of work with Kamiya. Currently, I'm following some of the newer protocols by Ruth Lanius because it's simpler, more direct, and seems to have less side effects, where it's just alpha down training at PZ, sort of a reset protocol, and it doesn't actually suppress alpha. We don't see alpha reduce at all. In fact, if anything, we see it rebound quite aggressively, very quickly. And it does seem to be high tolerance. People seem to tolerate it very, very well. You have to watch out for unstable phenotypes. So if they're prone towards headaches, migraines, history of seizures, traumatic brain injuries, you'll induce insomnia, anxiety, or headaches. And that's when you have to stop and use a stabilizing protocol. Sometimes you can get around the problem with things like ISF or ILF, T3, T4 stabilizing. Those are sort of newer protocols. Mark Smith does great research, but it's still new compared to things like SMR training. It doesn't have as much research as SMR training, but I do find it to be good at cutting the dissociation down and stabilizing the brain. And it's the only protocol that I've found that seems to have the potential to reduce dissociation while simultaneously stabilizing the brain, which makes it a high value intervention. But it doesn't work every time. Whereas alpha down training is pretty consistently going to work. It's very hard to fail at alpha training, but they can't always tolerate it if they're unstable. That's the problem.
Why not train up peak alpha by training something like 10 to 13 or 10 to 12? Why low beta?
Partially because that's where the research is and that's what's shown to work. It's a good question. I think you can train up slow alpha, but you don't know why it's slow. If you try to ask something to speed up and you don't provide the appropriate compensation, sometimes you're going to get side effects. And so that is like, I'm kind of warming up to that being the answer. But what I would expect from somebody who had like a concussion or Lyme disease or lead poisoning or mold toxicity, mycotoxin count, IgE count is really high, something like that. And we haven't resolved necessarily some of the acute distressors from why it slowed down. Trying to ask the brain to speed up without adding compensation like low beta is going to give you things like insomnia, anxiety, headaches, and then you're going to have to stop. So
what numbers do you use for low beta? Jahan wants to know.
Usually it's 12 to 15 if you're doing midline or right hemisphere.
Okay.
Some people do a little higher frequency on the left hemisphere, but left hemisphere has some downsides. It's good for attention, not so good for emotional connection.
All right.
So people don't train exclusively left hemisphere. I mean, people do, they shouldn't. So it makes you kind of a jerk.
There you go.
Of jerks, have you seen the new online DSM-6? Is that what they're calling it? I don't even know.
I don't have energy for this. Oh, Pete, why? Why you gotta do this to me, Pete? Why? I don't have any space for that. It's like, nope.
Anybody that's watching or listening experience it? I'm just curious.
DSM-6.
So you don't have a book now? You just go online and you got to come up, get your code there? Or?
I mean, I just rarely diagnose. If I'm forced into it, I'll go through the process. I don't want to diagnose people. And part of it is we can't take insurance anyways, being neurofeedback providers. So why do I want to do this?
Well, that's what I was asking, because there are some that got a licensed person to use it with their talk therapy and bill it. I just wonder if anything new is coming out of there, because I'm sure
I might take a look at it, but it just makes me depressed. I mean, the last version wasn't better than the previous version. So how is 6 going to be better?
Don't we have a troller out there that works over at ISNR that would know something about these codes?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think she's on our chat yet, but
where are you,
I just never hear good stories about people getting their treatment covered. And in fact, a friend just went to get neurofeedback. I'm sure it happens. Okay. But a friend just went to go and get neurofeedback in Alabama. And they were told, oh, yeah, it's going to be a $15 copay. 10 sessions later, they come back. Oh, we're just kidding. You weren't covered and you owe us $1,500 now.
Yeah.
And so now they have to get, are they going to get legal involved? I don't know, my friend. But
they just can't do that to people. They can't.
Of course you can't. I'm debating mentioning who this clinician is. That's something I'm holding out. And to be honest with you, they're completely gaslighting. Oh yeah, no. Well, the insurance company, we told them, and the insurance company has told her we record all the calls. We have no record of ever telling her you were covered. So anyway, hopefully in fact, I actually know somebody that works at that office listens to this podcast. So hopefully they'll know who I'm talking about. because it's been very distressing. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars I lose every single year because I'm just a generous, bad business owner. And I can see the appeal of being kind of hard-nosed on things, and you'll make more money. 20 grand will add up. 10 grand will add up every year. I am poor. I pay myself less than you would guess, but that comes with a certain amount of being able to sleep at night. Yes. So, and my employees, I did the math. My employees do make more than I do. There's not a single clinician in the building who makes less than me. Every single one makes more than me. And like all you have to do is run the hours, and you can see really quickly. Oh, yep. They quickly, very easily. Even if you don't count my overtime, which you should, they definitely make more than me. And I don't feel bad about that. I get to steer the ship. There's a little bit of a privilege there.
Yeah.
Josh, have you tried using Claude Code to vibe code neurofeedback software?
Not personally. I've kind of tinkered with it. Me and my daughter are playing around with coding together, making like short video games. I actually bought her a domain name, so I'm going to like have a domain for my kids' programs. She's 9, by the way. So I have a 9-year-old who's coding video games. It's hilarious. And it's just using AI. So you're like, oh, how could she do that? She's not. She's just doing prompts. It's fun. There are individuals who write in Python, and I suspect they use a lot of AI to help them to write neurofeedback code, like Ryan Ellis, and his stuff is pretty impressive. It's not my cup of tea in that I prefer more like looking at all the data, looking at the 19 channels, doing phenotyping, but you don't get band ranges, you don't get average numbers, you don't get ratios, you don't get kind of the son of the stuff that computers use to talk. So the future might belong to people who are much better with some of these, cloud code, vibe code, and people who might have been doing, more tabled numbers with neurofeedback. I kind of despise that as a practitioner, but it's the language that computers talk. And so if there's any automation, that might be where the most utility comes from. It might come from those kinds of practitioners. Even though I never would run a clinic that way, it might be what the computers need to learn from. So again, that's the reason why I'm not going to be using like AI to build software, because what would I get it to do? I have a very, very high standard for how I assess the EEG, the QEEG, and software is not going to be able to bridge that gap anytime soon. So,
wow, that's a big statement.
Well, people are going to try, and I'm all for it, and I'm all for helping them. By the way, they're going to try. Cool. But again, computers think with numbers. They don't think with impressions. So you and I will look at the brain waves and we'll go, okay, there's a deficiency of alpha and there's an excess of fast content like beta, fast alpha, mid beta. Okay, well, what exactly makes a low voltage fast a low voltage fast? Jay actually published a paper on how there's no defining characteristic that makes it a low voltage fast, but every single one of us knows exactly that it's a low voltage fast. So but you have to quantify that at some point into a series or almost a spectrum of an equation for the computer to recognize what is intuitively obvious to you and me. That's not a theta to beta ratio. It's way more complicated. It's 1,000,000 times more complex than theta to beta ratio. And so like the algorithm for that is going to be immense if you do it at all. So
you remind me, I saw the Chris Pratt movie this weekend about it's an AI judge. She judges crimes, and he's a detective, and he has to teach it what a hunch is. And she's like, I don't understand. I only go on the evidence. He's like, it's something that you know without knowing is kind of the thing. So so it'll get better, but will it get all the way there?
Isn't that what AI is? You're comparing something that you've seen before.
It is pattern matching. Yeah, it's inference. But I guess maybe on that grand scale, there's patterns maybe a human will catch, maybe just by accident. I don't know.
Yeah. And I also think that quantum computers are going to be how you actually bridge that gap with the quantitative processing that you and I like to do with 19 channels. Quantum computers are going to bridge that gap for AI. And you can know that because if you look at what iMedisync did for their dementia discriminant, that's exactly how you're going to build it out. You're going to build it out the way they built their discriminant. They used a quantum computer paired with an AI model to come up with a massive algorithm that predicts dementia. You could do the exact same thing for the low voltage fast phenotype. Absolutely.
That's incredible.
But it's phenomenal what they did. And if they can reproduce that, again, that's where you create an insurmountable amount of work with very little effort. So like, are you going to displace jobs? Like, yeah, but you're going to create way more work than you're going to, eliminate. So
let me, as we were saying earlier today, or you were saying, let me plug for you. Jahan is asking for a consult. What do you guys need? Is a Thatcher map and a phone call enough, or do you need other stuff for people who can't travel?
Sure. So a lot of us, and I don't know exactly if you're the same way as me, I think you probably are, but I like to just look at the raw edf.eeg files. I want to look at the raw brainwaves myself. I want to be able to look at them in different montages. I want to be able to clean the data, see what it looks like uncleaned. And when I have clients, not clients, I misspoke. When I have individuals who come to mentoring groups or take my classes, oftentimes they'll bring sort of maps from different automated software. And what I like to do for the first 3 or 4 meetings is I like to process it ourselves. And I like to ask at each step, was I fair? Was I too heavy-handed? Do we feel confident that I took out just exactly what needed to take out and not too much? And we talk about how to describe, single motor units versus brainwaves. And we go through it very, very carefully so they feel absolutely confident that we did it very carefully and very selective. When we're all done, we talk about what pops out, what's the elephant in the room, what is the obvious phenotype, what's the obvious neuromarkers. And they feel really satisfied that we did a good job. Then when they think we're done, we go to the automated maps and we look and see what those say. And they're always very disappointed at how far off it was. And I've never seen it not be that way. And I don't want to dog on automated maps too much, because I know people worked very, very, very hard on that. And there probably is a way to do that well, but I'm not convinced that that's how all of that. And as far as the people who are coming to me, they're not getting that quality control that other people might be, or that it's intended to be used. Perhaps. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. I just know that that's my experience so far. And after doing that 2 or 3 times, they're very happy to learn how to do raw data interpretation. Say, well, I'm willing to learn how to read the raw data myself. And you can. It takes months. It takes months of going to meetings, but you can learn how to do it yourself.
That's incredible. Well, yeah, and I told Jahan if he can get you a USB stick, maybe. I mean, email works too. If they can email him an EDF, would be great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Any new learnings on your Titanic machine?
We're having a lot of fun. I think as of next week, after the medical director does their screenings, I suspect it's going to be full. And I suspect that the employees that I hired and trained are going to be taking over the show, and I'll actually get to go back to normal work hours. So I've been working 13-hour days for at least a month, getting this thing ready to go, getting the schedule worked out, getting the paperwork built, getting the staff hired, getting the staff trained. It's been an immense investment. But when it's all said and done, we have employees here supervising this thing on 90-minute rotations, which takes them maybe 15 minutes to rotate people out. And then they have 75 minutes where we could put them to work on other things, possibly doing easy neurofeedback protocols, possibly just getting the place organized and clean, doing accounting, and anything they can do to free me up so I can start working on the classes again. And we're charging 1/3 of what the local community is charging for this service. So we're also providing brain maps and cognitive tests. So we're just like knocking it out of the park. Like there's no competition where we're at. So
well, that's amazing. I have a follow-up for you on the oxygen, but Jahan's asking, so if he can get you raw data, what would be the process for him to get with you or to send that to you?
Yeah, so I should be careful about saying this out loud on the internet, but I'll say it anyways to my great detriment. I shouldn't say this, but I'll say it. I don't charge for the first meeting, Jahan. So if you just want to meet and go over a case, I do it for free for people who are wanting to learn neurofeedback and get into it. Again, that's a very dangerous thing to say on a recorded line. So that may not be a policy that exists in the future if I get bombarded.
It's a sample.
If you're working on learning neurofeedback and you're considering mentoring, like I do generally meet face-to-face at no charge for the first hour. We go over a case generally that the person brings, and it's considered continuing education mentoring. So, and I'll break down the file myself. I'll clean it. I'll explain to you the process of why. And then we'll talk about what we see as we see it and why that means what it means. And we'll go over the research. I usually copy the research into the chat box so that you have some reference to what we're talking about, and we let you record those meetings. That's
great.
What we're going for. And then I'm trying to build classes to supplement that, to increase people's ability to catch on and learn quicker. So that's what was asked about the alpha asymmetries phenotype. That's the one coming. There's 11 of those, so I've got more to go.
So should he check your website to get in touch with you, or is there a preferred method?
You can just email the website. There's an email where you can do contact form, or you can email the line on the website. Just anything will go to my office manager or me, and we'll connect with you and give you a time. So
and your
there's also the ability to
schedule, was what?
You can schedule online as well. I think there's a consult, ability to schedule a consult.
What's your URL, Joshua? We'll have it in the details.
Oh, yeah. Neurofeedbackcare.com.
That's a good URL. Was it available? You had to buy it off.
No, it's available. I collect neurofeedback URLs. I literally collect the good ones. I'm hoarding them.
All right.
So, I've been hoarding a few of them.
Do you ever look at the suggested values? I know that's all crap, but
well, so some of that stuff is based on traffic. So I think the neurofeedbackcare.com has had traffic for 15 years. So it's probably got a value of like $6,000. That's just because if I sold it, it would come with the fact that it gets like 2,000 hits a month. So you're selling the fact that Google's spider software has already identified it as meaningful. So that's kind of what you're selling. Now, if you sold it and didn't use it, within a month you'd lose all the value because Google would unmap it. So you have to be really careful. Like if you're buying something that's kind of mapped to Google, you want to buy the value that's attributed to it for a lot of these companies like Google. And so you have to be really, really careful, because if you transfer it and then republish a website, sometimes it'll actually erase all that history with Google and it'll take you off Google. And I don't know when it does that and when it doesn't. And that's something like before buying a domain name, you got to do a little bit of research and talk to a professional, because you don't want to lose that. You could literally buy a great domain and then lose all the history, just gone, just because you use the wrong software.
Let me ask you a question, Josh. Back to the oxygen, since I have you here. I think before there was a caller who said, I have someone with a lot of, I think they said diffuse delta, and Dr. Hill said, I actually even said maybe oxygen for that, and Dr. Hill's like, no, I would go PBM. And so, is there something that causes you to say PBMs or oxygen is better for one?
Yeah, the history, definitely the history. Like you have to know why. So here's the thing: diffuse delta can be a dopamine deficiency. It's a pretty extreme dopamine deficiency, but it's a dopamine deficiency. Okay, is oxygen going to help that? No. Photobiomodulation might. There's pharmacological implications that might help. Neurofeedback can help. Frontal lobe blood flow training can help. There's all kinds of things you can do if you identify the mechanism of action behind that global delta. But it matters a lot what it is. It's like there's global delta. Like, okay, what is that? What exactly are we talking about? Is it an injury? Is it inflammatory? Is it developmental? Are they autistic? Because that can happen with autism sometimes.
Are there cases though that the PBM, the photobio, and the oxygen, they help the same client, or there's are there ones where you're kind of doing like this? I'm curious, the overlap.
Well, again, the history is going to drive what I'm going to choose. Now, the neuromarkers are going to give me hints as to what to ask for. But if they said I had a bad car accident and I've been foggy brain since then, I'm going to go to HBOT. So, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go to HBOT. And it's like, okay, you've got this diffuse global delta, and you said you've been foggy brain since the car accident. Like the writing on the wall, says let's do HBOT. You can do photobiomodulation. You might give them a headache. So you can try. Neurofeedback, can likely work, but you could also likely get some prickly side effects from somebody with a lot of delta after a head injury. Doesn't mean it's not worth trying. So again, the history becomes extremely paramount in these cases. If they don't know why, was there any sudden change, or has it always been like this? It could just be developmental. Again, you'll see autistic individuals with a lot of diffuse delta. And in that case, I think maybe photobiomodulation is not a bad thing to go. Neurofeedback, not a bad thing to go, But I've seen HBOT studies on autism too, so it's hard to know when it won't work.
Yes, and I think it was an autistic. It was an autistic. You said you have seen it work in autism.
No, there's actual published studies. I don't know. I need to do more reading on that though. So I'm not marketing this thing even clinically. Like we're just kind of like, it's a thing we want to use when we think it's a good fit. And there's so much demand for it that we're not exactly even like looking for applications. but it's possible that autism is an appropriate application for it. I would just do a lot more reading before deciding on that.
Radar has a question. I've asked him a follow-up. He says, what do you think of vagus nerve stimulators like Pulsetto, Sensate, Neuropod? And so I'll forward this to you. But my question for him too is, what's he trying to achieve? What do you think, Josh?
Yeah. No, that's 100% the right question. And I would even suspect some people think that it's stimulating and activating the vagal nerve, and they think that that's why it's so calming. But I cannot help but wonder if it's disrupting the vagal nerve, and that's why it feels good. Because the vagal nerve is sending signals about how dysfunctional the body is to the brain, and the brain is trying to match it. And if you're disrupting that pathway, there might be other reasons why that feels good. So is it a perturbation, or is it actually turning it on? And I have not answered that question. I don't know if Jay would have an opinion on that or not, because it's kind of a newer technology.
Huberman talks a lot about vagus nerve, and he says this, and I've ascertained too, followed up on my own, that it's both stimulating and it's inherently, the vagus nerve is actually more often than not, it's stimulating. So when they, I think it's like epileptics to have a VNS or something, their heart rate actually goes up after they use it. But there might be a difference between like acute and chronic effect. But I just want to say that there's something cool that I found, which is that VNS stimulators increase sigma, which is the sleep spindle. And so I think on some level, the way they're working is by activating SMR, the sleep spindle. And in other words, Radar, what were you saying, Josh?
You'd have to, yeah. And you see this comment by Radar about it reducing inflammation. That's why I wonder if it's also a disruptor, because the vagal nerve actually promotes inflammation. So it's triggering and disrupting. It seems to have qualities of both. That's why I'm confused by it.
Yeah, it seems to be interesting. I guess with neurofeedback, I feel like it's a more targeted approach. So, Radar, I don't know. Some people have trouble with SMR, but maybe SMR is a place to start. But maybe there's a way to get the results you're looking with a more targeted than VNS. Tori, let's see. Tori had a question. I'm just wondering if you have any experiences with them. Oh, that's Radar's. Yeah, sorry, I missed Tori's. Okay, this is Tori. I'm sorry. Tori's question is, her aunt is starting TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, for Parkinson's. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a couple different subtypes of Parkinson's, and the main person for Parkinson's is Lisa Tartarin. I know she's easily findable on LinkedIn. And she's kind of like Parkinson's, like her main jam. And I believe, and I hope I'm not paraphrasing. Thank you. You got her name. Tartar. I actually said it right. Oh, good for me. She actually, I believe there's a few different subtypes of Parkinson's. I think she said 5. And so with TMS, as always, it's nice to choose the appropriate frequency with the appropriate device at the appropriate location. And, there probably is going to be a Parkinson's protocol for TMS because it's catching most of them, or maybe several of those 5 all respond to the same approach. But it's nice to check first if you can. I actually had a client that came in here like a week ago, and they came in right before they had a TMS consult. And I was able to do the brain map and quickly write up a letter on, hey, you need to do a bent V coil or an H coil, and it needs to be centered at FZ. And it needs to be at 10 hertz. And I was able to just write that down, and I put a few citations, and the TMS clinic was elated. They loved it. They were not upset for having a clue. They're very happy to have a clue as to, which protocol would be more effective. They loved the QEEG application.
That's impressive.
I've never seen an exception.
Go on. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I had the opposite experience. Somebody I know went to the clinic and they said, well, we just do one thing and you're just going to get that.
Oh, geez.
very so, and it was not what's indicated for them. This was coming from Jay. So
yeah.
It's like take it or leave it was kind of their,
Well, and it could be that they didn't have the equipment that was being recommended.
Yeah, they probably, to be fair, they probably didn't.
Yeah, if you have a flat coil or a flat figure 8 coil, you can't really reach the anterior cingulate. It's 2 to 4 millimeters. You need a deeper penetration, and you're only going to get that from a bent H coil, from a bent V coil, figure 8 coil, or from an H coil. Those are the only way you're going to reach the anterior cingulate. And so, what failure mode is driving the dysfunction? Lisa Tartarin being, the best person to give you insights on that, in my opinion. And then, you want to target that with the appropriate pulse at the appropriate location. 1 hertz is excitatory. 10 hertz is excitatory if the alpha peak is slower than 10. Yeah.
And Tori, I was going to tell you, so Lisa is active on Facebook, but it's only in you might be able to find her. She's really active in at least one Facebook group, and I cannot find it right now. I thought it was Neurofeedback Therapy Advocacy, but if you're comfortable with Facebook, that might be a way just to throw out. She's
active on LinkedIn. She's active on LinkedIn.
Active. Yeah, that's great. Look for her on there, and she obviously you can find her in her office on Google, Tori, and maybe she'd be willing to throw you a few cents, so to speak. There.
Yeah.
Joshua, again, where can we find these workshops?
Yeah, so QEEGcourses.com. Give me realistically, I know it's probably 2 weeks. I'll try to get the alpha asymmetries phenotype out. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I want it to be good. And it deserves to be good because there's lots of good data on this one. So QEEGcourses.com, pretty simple URL. If you jump in earlier, you won't get punished for it. The best deals come for newer workshops to those who are already subscribed. So I won't go into details, but I'll just say that is the truth, that it's cheapest for those who are already a member. So it's sort of like I tag accounts with early member.
I hear you. Anthony, last one, and we'll shut the pizza ovens down.
Yeah, just thanks, Pete, and thanks everyone, and great community that you guys are building here, that Pete's helped build here. So, and you can reach us more, Brainmaster group on Facebook, Neurofeedback Exchange, and Science and Technology Discovery group. So thank you.
And we'll answer Anna's last question here.
Yeah.
Is there an optimal number
of sessions for SMR training? Can you overtrain? How would you know, Josh?
Yeah. So if you're dealing with an epileptic, you're going to be pretty comfortable with going, 100, 200 sessions. Once you get beyond 200 sessions, there's sort of a discussion that if you're having an effective feedback loop and they're actually very responsive to it, we kind of expect there's 2 things to consider. One is that even if you're counterbalancing it appropriately, people with a lot of SMR spindles that are large and quite frequent, we tend to see them get a little bit of a flatter affect. If you're dealing with someone who's unstable and are prone to epilepsy, that's sort of something that we sometimes accept because epilepsy can kill you and having a flat affect doesn't. The other thing is the need for counterbalancing. You can have too much SMR in that you've done it too much without counterbalancing it. That doesn't mean you can't do more later. But sometimes when you're training up the sensory motor rhythm is also your sleep spindles. It has a role in vigilance. It can get a little bit overactivated and a little bit over turned on. And you can just get sedated and tired and lethargic, and you can sleep too much and not wake up. And you want to stay in bed and you fall asleep quickly, and you stay in bed after you fall asleep. You're kind of like, why am I so sleepy all the time? Well, it may be that the SMR training needs to be counterbalanced with some frontal training. And you have that in the mix. Okay.
Anna wants to know anything different for kids.
Oh, for kids, it's more dramatic. Kids are highly prone to side effects for sensory motor rhythm training. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Kids get a ton out of sensory motor rhythm training, but they're also very, very prone to side effects. And so you have to optimize, and you have to watch them closely, and you have to counterbalance them. They're not necessarily going to be prone to getting, as I said, that flat affect stuff that you tend to see after 200 sessions. They don't get there very quickly. It's not something you have to be concerned about at all. But in terms of optimizing the frequency and optimizing it with counterbalancing, kids are going to run into that every time. Every kid has side effects. So you just watch kids closer and you make changes, and you normalize that for the parent. Like, it's going to be fine. They're going to have side effects. Let me know when they happen. I'll make some changes. We'll figure it out. We'll go away. And there's a study by Corey Hammond where he was just doing sensory motor rhythm training and assessing for side effects, and found that in the control group, not the placebo, but in the control group for kids, there was 100% report of side effects. Again, not a big deal. You got to make some adjustments, then they're happy. Okay.
Interesting.
Anthony Ramos, Joshua Moore, Anna Radar, Tori, Jahan. Every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central or 7 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Pacific. Join us here. Let's nerd out. And if we don't answer your questions or we can't get to you, Pete@neuronoodle.com. Email me. I'll get together with Jay Gunkelman and Dr. Marie Thursday morning, and we'll do a Thursday show to talk about anything we didn't cover here, everybody. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for showing up again. Let's do it again next week.
All right. Thank you,
Over now, boys. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
And